Hi everyone. In this video, I am going to discuss regarding Johnson's behavioral system theory. So it is one of the wonderful theories what we have in nursing related to behavioral system. So overview of this video. In this video, I will be discussing regarding introduction to the theorist, that is about Dorothy E. Johnson, the concepts related to the theory, sub-concepts, theoretical assertions, and the model. So this will be part 1 video. In part 2 video, I will be sharing regarding the assumptions, propositions, meta-paradigm, and nursing process application. So let's move on to the content. First, related to the theorist. So, her full name is Dorothy E. Johnson. Johnson was born in 1919 in Georgia, and she did her bachelor's in nursing from Vanderbilt University in 1942. So, after that, she took her MPH from Harvard University in 1948. So, from 1949 till her retirement in 1978, Johnson was working under various positions in the academics, that is starting from assistant professor in pediatric nursing. Then she got promoted to associate professor, later to professor of nursing at University of California in Los Angeles. So we understand that she was a pediatric nurse, and no wonder she has made a theory on behavioral system. In 1968, Johnson published a paper that was the first entry into the aspect of theory. Okay, her work was first recognized in 1968, where she published a paper with the heading One Conceptual Model of Nursing, and that paper was a classic contribution to nursing literature. So that was really the entry point of Johnson to establish a particular theory. So the name of the paper was One Conceptual Model of Nursing. Even after her retirement, it was found that she remained very active as a speaker and advocate of nursing education. So we find this common in all the theorists. I think when I took when I presented a video on Roy's adaptation model also, I was telling like after retirement, like she was greatly contributing to the nursing profession. So the same holds true for Dorothy E. Johnson, and she died in 1999. Now, let us move on to the concepts of the theory. So, if you are a student who is watching this video, especially if you are a postgraduate student, I want you to remember that she did her master's and she worked as a pediatric nurse, and she published a paper, One Conceptual Model of Nursing. At least these few points you should remember very well about Dorothy E. Johnson. It's easy to remember pediatrics, just remember behavior. So, behavioral problem usually is seen in children, okay, very commonly compared to adults it is seen in children. So behavioral system model, so definitely Johnson is a pediatric nurse. Now coming on to the concepts of the theory. So we find that there are many concepts which are there in Johnson's behavioral system model. Many concepts are there. Okay, so we'll have to remember that, but it is easy to remember. Once you understand what is a base, it is very easy to remember all the concepts for your exam. So what is the first concept? That is called as behavior. So name of the theory is behavioral system. So behavior is the first concept. What is behavior? According to Johnson, output of intra-organismic structures and process as they are coordinated, as they are articulated by and response to changes in sensory stimulation. Though it looks little bit vague, actually it is a very simple statement. Behavior is an output. What others see is our behavior. What we see in others is not their attitude or is not their values. What we see them is behavior. So whatever is there inside, maybe I have a good attitude, maybe I have good values, but how does it how does someone know that it is my behavior? So according to Johnson, behavior is an output. Output of whom? Output of organismic structures as they are coordinated, and it is response to changes in sensory stimulation. When somebody is good to, say, a person X, the person X also will be good to that person. But suppose if there is a change in the sensory stimulation, suppose if a rude person is going to uh, cause some damage to person X, this person may not behave in the same way. So that is changes in the sensory stimulation will affect our output, which is nothing but the behavior. So please to remember two keywords. One is behavior is an output. Number two, what you have to remember is behavior will change based on the sensory stimulation, which comes from the environment. So that is called as behavior. Now coming on to the second concept, that is called a system. So what is the name of the theory? Behavioral system theory. So what is the first concept? First word, behavior. What is the second word? System. So system is the second concept. What do you mean by a system? According to Johnson, system is that which functions as a whole by virtue of organized independent interaction of its parts. It's very easy. Okay, system is nothing but the system is functioning as a whole. But what is making the system to function as a whole? It is because of organized interaction of the parts. What do you mean by organized interaction of the parts? Let me give you an example. For example, we have so many systems in our body. I am not talking about behavioral system. I am giving an example from biological system. Say for example, gastrointestinal system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system. Now for example, you take respiratory system. In respiratory system, we have so many parts are there. So a system is functioning as a whole by interaction of its parts. Parts is, say for example, respiratory system, cardiac system, gastrointestinal system. Everything is going to work separately, but it is going to work together so that the ultimate behavioral system is going to function well. So just remember this keyword. System is something which is functioning as a whole. For example, cardiovascular system is functioning to pump the blood to all parts of the body. So that is, it is functioning as a whole. Cardiac system has a function, but that is, this system is working by many parts. What are the parts? Maybe I need the heart, there is a myocardium, endocardium, blood vessels, aorta. You have so many parts. So all these parts are working together, and that is how a cardiovascular system is able to pump the pump the blood from the heart. Okay, so system is something, the key word is functioning as a whole because of its organized independent interaction of its parts. So that is called a system. The third concept, behavioral system. It's easy, you know. First concept is, see the word, you should just remember the name of the theory. Behavioral system theory. First concept is behavior. Second concept is system. Third concept is behavioral system. Behavioral system. What is a behavioral system? According to Johnson, man is a behavioral system. Man is a system. Okay, and this system is going to display the state of the system through behavior. So we know that we all have, according to Johnson, she believed that there are two systems. One is biological system, like for example, cardiac, gastrointestinal, respiratory. All those things are biological system. But Johnson gave importance to behavioral system. Behavioral system means how I behave with another people, how somebody else is behaving in a community. That is called as behavioral system. Okay, so who is a behavioral system? Man is a behavioral system. Man is a system who is trying to indicate the state of the system. How? Through behavior. Say for example, a person is lying down. That is a behavior, and you're going to ask what happened. Maybe that person will say that I'm feeling sick. So he is indicating the state of the system through behaviors. Then Johnson believed that this man, that is this behavioral system, is having a patterned, repetitive and purposeful way of behaving. We all have a way of behaving. As I have put an example, I will do it in my own way. So we all have our own way of behaving. Maybe some of us are very generous. Maybe some of us are very loving. Some of us are very kind to others. That is because repetitively, when you show a particular, the particular way of behaving with others, that becomes your behavior, which means it is a patterned one, it is a repetitive one, it is a purposeful one. We do each thing with a purpose. For example, early morning you wake up, you get ready fast, you go to your work or to your office, or you go to your college for studying. So we all have a purposeful behavior, we have a patterned behavior, we have a repetitive behavior. So this is what Johnson believed about a human being, because this human being is a behavioral system. So what is a behavioral system? Man is a behavioral system. What is this behavioral system showing? It shows repetitive behavior. They have their own pattern, and this behavior is found to be purposeful. Again, behavioral system, she believed that this behavior is organized. It limits the interaction between the person and environment. Behavioral system established the relationship of persons to the object, events, and situations in his environment. So, just for an example, if a stranger is going to come and talk with you, we have a limit because we don't know about that particular person. I hope all of us are like that. Okay, like we talk with them, we have a communication with them, but we don't behave with them very closely in the first encounter, right? That is because we have our own way of organized way of behaving. But if you're going to see small children, very small kids, okay, they don't have that particular type of behavior. They really, they don't have that capacity to think whether it is a stranger or whether it is a relative or whether it is a family member. But as we are growing, as we are maturing, we have our own organized way of interacting with another person as well as with the environment. We limit our interaction. At the same time, we establish our relationship with certain other people. Maybe with our family, maybe with our friends, we are very close and we have a very good relationship. So Johnson believed that this behavioral system has an organized way of interacting where a person knows where to limit and where to establish a relationship with the environment or with another person. So she again believed that behavioral system, the behavior is very orderly, it is purposeful, and it is predictable. Say for example, if you are going to wish somebody, say you say good morning, it is a predictable response that the other person also will wish at you, is it not? So that is a sort of predictable. So this is what Johnson believed about man or the behavioral system. So many concepts are there. So first three we have completed. Shall we just tell the keywords? What is the first one? Behavior. What is the keyword for behavior? It is an output. Behavior is an output, and behavior will change based on the stimuli. What is the second thing we studied? System. What is a system? A system is a whole. For example, just remember cardiac system. It is working as a whole because of the interdependence of the parts. That is system. The third one is Johnson gave importance to behavioral system. What is a behavioral system? Man is a behavioral system. What is the system going to do? Behavioral system, the behaviors are found to be purposeful. We have our own repetitive, we have our own patterned way of behaving either with another human being or with the environment. She believed that this behavioral system has the ability to limit the interaction and also to establish a relationship with another object or another person. So three concepts are over. Now we are going to move on to the next word, the most important word. I think subsystem. If you are going to study the subsystems, if you are going to write this in exam, actually your theory is complete. Okay, in the sense like because all the subsystems is what Johnson gives importance to in her theory. So the fourth concept is subsystem. What do you mean by a subsystem? Subsystem is a mini system. So, man is a behavioral system. So, within this behavioral system, there are many subsystems. So, what is that? It is a mini system, just like I told you, gastrointestinal system, or when I say it is going to be respiratory system. So, that is a mini system. It is a mini system with its own goal, its own function. Gastrointestinal system, the function is say digestion, absorption, and excretion. Okay, if you're going to see respiratory system, there is a separate function, that is breathing. Okay, cardiovascular system may be to maintain the cardiac output, to maintain the blood pressure. So each system has its own function. So each one system is called as a mini system. A mini system which has its own goal, which has its own function, and this mini system will function very well as long as the relationship to the other system is not disturbed. See, what Johnson believed is, if one system is affected, there is a chance that other systems can also be affected. See, though Johnson's theory is a behavioral system theory, I have put a picture of gastrointestinal system in this slide. Okay, so why I am putting this is so that we can first understand this, and something related to that is what Johnson is talking in terms of behavior. So what is a subsystem? Subsystem is a mini system like gastrointestinal system, cardiac system, respiratory system, hematological system. So it is a separate system with its own goal. This subsystem has its own goal, it has its own function. If cardiac system is affected, maybe renal system can also be affected. If cardiac system is affected, nervous system can also be affected. Why? Because they are interdependent. Same way, Johnson believed that when any one of the behavioral subsystem is affected, the other subsystems can also be affected. Now coming directly, what are the subsystems according to Johnson's theory? There are 7 subsystems. How many? 7 subsystems. But you may find in new books and in say new internet blogs, you will find that 8 subsystems are being told. Only 7 subsystems were accepted by Johnson. But later on, many people, many scholars, many clinicians, many faculty, they wanted to add the 8th subsystem to Johnson's theory. Okay, but so far that 8th subsystem is not completely accepted, but still we do mention about this 8th subsystem when we write her theory. So there are 8 subsystems, 7 properly accepted by Johnson in her behavioral system theory. So what is a subsystem? Subsystem is a mini system. Okay, this mini system is going to have its own goal. It has its own function. How many subsystems are there? 7 subsystems are there. And one extra, 8th is there. It is not completely accepted. Now, this subsystem has its own motivational drive. See, why we take a respiration? Because there is a physiological mechanism of hypercapnia which is causing us to initiate us to take a breath. Okay, that is how we take a breath. So there is a motive behind everything. Why do we take food? Because we feel hungry, we take food. Same way, in a behavioral subsystem, there is a drive, there is a motivational drive, and that drive is actually making this subsystem to work. Just like feeling hungry makes me to eat a plate of food, same way in a behavioral subsystem there is some motivational drive which is making me to behave in a certain way. So that is called as motivational drive, and this motivational drive will keep on changing by maturation, by experience and learning. See, when I was a small kid, whenever I feel hungry, irrespective of the time, irrespective of where I am sitting, irrespective of in whose house I am, I may cry and I may ask for food. But now as a grown-up individual, though I feel hungry, we all will consider where we are, with whom we are. Is it right to ask and say that I am feeling hungry? So there are a lot of factors which keeps on changing. This motivational drive, it changes through maturation, through our experience and through our learning. So please remember, there is a drive for a subsystem to work. So there are a lot of factors, biological factors, psychological factors and sociological factors. As I told you in this example, biological factors, feeling hungry. When I was a kid, maybe I will cry. But now I know how to control. Psychological factor, if I am not feeling good, I may not eat food. Psychological factor. Sociological factor, if I am not comfortable with the group of people where I am, I may hesitate to take a food. See, there are so many factors which affects our behavior. So this is what Johnson is trying to explain through subsystem. So what is a subsystem? Subsystem is a mini system. Each mini system has its own goal, it has its own function. There is a motivation which causes the subsystem to work. And what is it controlled by? Biological factors, psychological factors, and sociological factors. Immediately now, I am not going to discuss about the subsystems. There are many other concepts. So we'll finish up all the concepts. Then we will have a detailed explanation regarding this 7 or 8 subsystems. So we have completed 4 concepts. What are they? First one is behavior. Second one is system. Third one is behavioral system. Fourth one is subsystem. Okay, so please remember the keyword. Behavior is the output. System functions as a whole because of its parts. What is behavioral system? Man is a behavioral system. What is a subsystem? It is a mini system which is functioning with its own goal, its own function. How many subsystems? 7 plus 1. 8 subsystem. It has a drive. It is affected by biological, psychological, and sociological factor. Shall we move to the next concept that is called as equilibrium? So we know that whenever there is a behavioral system, there will be a word like equilibrium. There will be a word that there is some stressor which is going to affect this equilibrium. There will be a word like something where disequilibrium. Okay, all these words will be there in a behavioral system theory. So it is easy to guess and write that there is a concept called as equilibrium. What do you mean by equilibrium? A stable person. A person whose behavior is found to be stable. You call that this person is in equilibrium. More or less transitory. Slightly changes will be there, but in which the individual is in harmony with himself and with his environment. See, your behavior, if you're going to see, Johnson believed that when we are having a type of behavior where I feel comfortable, I feel harmony with myself, I feel harmony with my environment, then everything is going to be fine. So that is called as equilibrium. Please remember the word stable. Equilibrium means stable. Harmony. Harmony with self, harmony with the environment. Then this word equilibrium, Johnson made it very clear that just because you are healthy doesn't mean that you have to be in equilibrium. Just because you are having sickness doesn't mean that you should not have equilibrium. What do you mean by that? Equilibrium is not affected either by health or by sickness. That is the importance of that word equilibrium. So equilibrium means I am stable. See, there are certain people who in spite of their suffering, they are very stable in their behavior. Okay, they don't become highly upset, they don't become highly rude or something like that. They accept it and they try to be in a state of health. So in spite of your sickness or in spite of your health, equilibrium is not going to be affected. If you can maintain a stable behavior, then according to Johnson, you are in a state of equilibrium. Harmony and stable. That is a key word. Next one is stressor. So very easy to remember what is a stressor. You all will know what is a stressor. We have studied a lot about this in Betty-Newman system theory. A stressor is an internal stimuli or an external stimuli which can produce tension resulting in instability. So stability is equilibrium. So what is causing instability? Stressor will cause instability. Where is the stressor coming from? This stressor can be endogenous or it can be exogenous. What do you mean by endogenous? Stressor is within me. What is exogenous? It comes from outside. Say for example, everybody are very good to me, but I am not feeling good. It is due to my internal psychological problem. Okay, that is endogenous stressor. Exogenous stressor, I was very happy today morning, but say someone came and shouted at me and yelled at me and spanked at me, that becomes an exogenous stressor. So I was in equilibrium, but this stressor, it came and disturbed me and I ended up with a disequilibrium. Okay, so that is stressor. It is either an internal stimuli or it can be an external stimuli. It can be a positive stressor or it can be a negative stressor. So we all have heard many examples about this. Like if you have a if you're slightly anxious before you attend an interview, it is always good because that is a positive stressor. It helps you to cope up. It helps you to attend the interview with more concentration and more attentiveness. So that is a positive stressor. Negative stressor is something which makes you to come down, where you feel highly depressed. That is called as negative stressor. So that is about that concept that is called as stressor. So what is a stressor? Stressor is a stimuli which is going to affect my state of equilibrium. This stressor can either be a positive stressor or it can be a negative stressor. It can be exogenous or it can be endogenous. So the next concept is tension. What is tension? A state of disequilibrium, a state where you feel strained, a state where you feel completely shattered. You call that state as tension. A state of being stretched or strained. It is a disturbance in equilibrium. This tension can either be constructive or it can be destructive. How you are able to adjust to the demand, how much you are able to adjust to the change on growth, how much you are able to adjust to actual disruption. Say for example, you have so many jobs to do, okay, in your office you have so many works to do, in your family you have so many commitments. Now how you are going to adapt to that particular demand, how you are going to adapt to the growth. Say for example, as we all grow, okay, we all have crossed the period of adolescence, next maybe the aging process. Now as you are aging, you have to cope up with that particular growth, you have to adapt to that particular growth. So if you are not able to adapt that properly, you end up in a state of tension. Okay, it is the how the system is getting adjusted to all these things, so that is called as tension. And if this tension is not handled properly, it is going to end up with instability. So that is the next concept, instability. What do you mean by instability? The output energy is depleting the energy needed to maintain stability. So two energies are there. One energy is helping me to be stable. The other energy is taking up all my, it is taking up all my energy. So what happens is that output is depleting the energy. I cannot cry anymore, I cannot adjust anymore, I cannot do anything more, because the sickness is so great, I am not able to cope up. So that stage where your energy is getting depleted, that energy which helped you to maintain stability is getting depleted, you call that condition as instability. So these are the words which Johnson gave importance to in her theory. So these are the various concepts in her theory. Let me tell you, it is very easy to remember. Only thing is you should know that behavior is there, system is there, behavioral system is there, subsystem is there. After that, I should remember that behavior, it talks about behavior. So the behavior can be stable or it can be unstable. So first I will talk about stable, that is called as equilibrium. Okay, equilibrium is a condition of stability where you are harmonious, everything goes well, homeostasis, that is called as equilibrium. Then there is something which can disturb this equilibrium. What is it called as stressor? So this stressor can be internal stressor or it can be external stressor, exogenous or endogenous. When this stressor is coming, this person ends up with a tension. Why tension? Because the system has to get adjusted to that particular stressor. Okay, so ability to adjust to the demand, ability to adjust to the growth, okay, all those things is called as tension. And if this person is not able to properly handle the tension, what will happen? The system goes into instability. What do you mean by instability? The energy is depleted. Which energy is depleted? The energy that is required to make oneself stable is getting depleted and the person goes into instability. It is easy, no? So these are the various concepts according to Johnson's behavioral system theory. For the last, once I'll tell you, first is we have behavioral system theory. Behavior, system, behavioral system, subsystem, okay, equilibrium. Stressor comes, tension ends up, once tension is not handled properly, it ends up with instability. Now we'll move on to sub-concepts. So there are three sub-concepts which are identified in Johnson's theory. Okay, so this is not very important from an exam point of view, but if you can write it, it is well appreciated. So what are the sub-concepts according to Johnson's theory? Number one is structure. What is structure? We know structure, function. We know what is the difference, right? Structure means anatomy. Function means it is physiology. So structure is the parts of the system that makes up the whole. For example, in gastrointestinal system, stomach, sigmoid colon, large intestine, small intestine, rectum, anus, all those things are each part. Okay, the part anatomically, the part of the system that is making up a gastrointestinal system becomes a structure. Same way, according to Johnson's behavioral system, in each subsystem, she believed that there is a structure. We will be discussing about that. Next is variable. See, it's very easy. Variable is nothing but a stressor. Okay, variable is any force outside the system which can affect the behavior of the system. and this system doesn't have any control over that particular variable. For example, stressor. A person ends up with a sickness. This person doesn't have any control to prevent an autoimmune disease. Okay, so that is called as lacking power to control that particular thing is called as a variable. Variable is nothing but stressor. Okay, it is a sub-concept. The last one, boundaries. Johnson said that there is something called as boundary. We know what is a boundary. In this picture, you know that fence is a boundary, which is dividing one person's place from another person's place. Same way, she believed that in a behavioral system, we all have a boundary, a point that differentiates the interior of the system from the exterior. See, there is a boundary in our behavior. When we behave with certain people, we have a boundary. With certain people, we allow them to cross the boundary and then to come to the interior. Whereas for certain people, we strictly tell them that this is your line, you cannot cross it. Even I don't want to cross that boundary with you because we are not familiar. Maybe we are strangers. Maybe we don't appreciate each other. So we have a boundary. So Johnson believed in her sub-concept that there is something called as a boundary, which is going to differentiate the system's interior from the system's exterior. So what are the three sub-concepts? It is going to be the structure, variables, and the boundary. What is the key word? Structure means it is the parts. What is a variable? External force, and the system is not going to have any control over that particular force is called as a variable. What is a boundary? Boundary is that line which is going to differentiate the interior of the system from the exterior. Next, we go on to subsystems. So far we have completed the concepts and the sub-concepts. Okay, in the concept when I discussed, I told you that there is in the subsystem, I told you that 7 plus 1, 8 subsystems are there. I told you that if you can study these 8 subsystems and if you are going to write, that is the crux of the theory. Okay, so let us see what are the subsystems. So according to Johnson, there are 7 subsystems. Number 1, affiliation. See, all these subsystems are talking about our behavior. It is not biological subsystem, it is behavioral subsystem. So she believed there is a subsystem called as affiliation, dependency, sexuality, aggression, elimination, ingestion, achievement, and the last one which she has not wholeheartedly accepted, that is restorative subsystem. Okay, so now let us see one by one. So please remember 7 plus 1. 8 subsystems are there in Johnson's behavioral system theory. So let us talk about the first subsystem, attachment or affiliative subsystem. What do you mean by that? In our behavior, Johnson believed that in our behavioral system, man is a behavioral system, and this system has some subsystem called as an attachment subsystems or an affiliative subsystem. What do we mean by that? That is, she believed that this attachment subsystem is the base for any social organization. She believed it is something very basic in order to feel secure. See how much of security we feel when we have a person whom we know, especially when you go to a new place. Say for example, you are visiting a new place and there you have one of your classmate, or there you find one of your family friend is already there. You feel such a sense of security because there is a social bond which is so strong, which helps to maintain the society. So that is called as attachment system or affiliative subsystem. So once you have a very good affiliative subsystem, there will be social inclusion. You will have an intimacy. There will be a strong social bond. So she believed that one important system what every human being should have is affiliative subsystem. A feeling of attachment, a feeling of being included in a society, okay, a feeling of having an intimacy. So she believed that is called as attachment subsystem. So what is the problem? Later on, there can be issues where people don't have an attachment subsystem, like say for example in certain psychiatric problems or psychological disorders, people they don't want to be included in the society. They always want to be alone. They want to move away. Depressed people, people with depression, they don't want to have that affiliative subsystem. So normally a behavioral subsystem, she believed that this behavioral system is having a very good affiliative subsystem. So what is the key word I should remember? Intimacy, social inclusion. Number two, dependency subsystem. She believed that a behavioral subsystem will be having a subsystem called as dependency subsystem. What is dependency? Is not just having attachment, but having a helping behavior where we can depend on each other. Okay, say for example, approval, attention, recognition, physical assistance. Though you wear a very good dress, okay, you get an approval from your friends, you get an approval or a recognition from your family members, you feel so good, because that is called as a dependency subsystem. Okay, because the behavioral system is not something alone. We are always interacting with the society. Whenever needed, I help someone. When I am in need, somebody helps me. That is called as dependency subsystem. Someone where you can have at least a few people where you can get an approval, maybe after your say after one of your project. Okay, you look up to your co-workers, you look up to your peer group, you look up to your authorities for their approval. That is for their recognition, for an appreciation, and also for helping each other, physical assistance. So we all know that dependency, when we all were kids, okay, we all were completely dependent on our parents. But then slowly, we started to gain independence. And so there is an evolution from total dependence to independence. So though we all are independent, Johnson believed that we are interdependent, which means that we are going to depend on each other. Okay, not only for physical assistance, but also for mental well-being. So that is a second subsystem which was told by Johnson. What is the name of that subsystem? Dependency subsystem. Affiliation means social inclusion, intimacy. Dependency means having someone for physical and mental well-being, depending on each other. Approval, recognition, appreciation, helping each other. These are the keywords of dependency subsystem. Number three, ingestive subsystem. Why did ingestive means eating food? Why did Johnson say about eating in behavioral subsystem? Why did she bring about nutrition in behavioral? It's a behavioral system. Why is she talking about eating in a behavioral system? Because it is not only on what you eat, but it is mainly concerned with the social events surrounding the occasion. I always tell my students, like when we have a lunch, okay, if you're going to have a lunch, okay, say you are going to have your lunch with your close friends, okay, with your close friends. And the second scenario is where you're going to have the same lunch with your authorities, maybe your higher authorities. Maybe there was a party, or maybe there was an official function, and you're also invited to share the lunch with them. Okay, where will you feel more comfortable? Where will you eat more? Sure, that is with your friends. Okay, when you are with your friends, with your very close friends, what happens is you feel completely free. Okay, you're feeling so free, and you talk a lot, you enjoy a lot, and the way, the culture, the way you carry yourself. So that is ingestive subsystem. It is a social event surrounding the occasion. See, it is made very clear in the following slide. When you eat, how much you eat, what you eat, under what conditions we eat. All these things are associated with biological as well as psychological and social considerations. When you are at home, maybe you eat very casually, okay, in the sense like maybe you eat more, and maybe you spend, you have so much of laughter and joy, and then you have your food. But the same thing when you're having the food with your higher authorities or with highly learned people, okay, we all know how we should eat and how much you eat. There is something called as table manners, and you know how much to eat and what to speak and how to maintain your social, you know, that personality before others. Okay, so that is called as ingestive subsystem. So which means Johnson believed that there is a behavior attached with eating, and every one of us, we know how we have to behave when we are eating, especially with whom you are eating, and how much and what conditions we are eating. One more example I'll tell you. As I told you earlier, when I was a kid, if I am hungry immediately, I will demand for food. But when I am seated in a conference, or when I'm attending a conference, okay, I feel hungry, but I know that that is not the right time to yell and shout and ask for food. I know that I have to keep my manners. I'll control myself, and then I will take food only when it is being served. So that is the behavior, how to behave when you feel hungry. That is ingestive subsystem. Now coming on to eliminative subsystem. So human cultures, we have different socially acceptable behaviors for excretion of waste, but that elimination pattern, it is found to be different from culture to culture. Just like an ingestive subsystem, when, how, what conditions we eliminate. That is a behavior which people have learned. Say you are traveling in a bus, okay, you want to void, but you know that within another 10 minutes or 15 minutes you will reach a particular destination, and so what you do is you try to control the urge to void. Okay, so what happens is we all learn how to control, because that is a behavior which is a part of the society. Eliminative subsystem is not just concerned with elimination, but when, how, and under what conditions we eliminate. Okay, because there are various factors which causes our behavior to have this particular eliminative subsystem either under control. If it is not, if that behavior subsystem is not properly developed, people end up with something called as incontinence or diarrhea, or people who don't have that mental ability to understand the reason behind the behavioral subsystem of, I mean, elimination, they will not have any control. But usually, normally, we all have that good behavioral eliminative subsystem. Next one is sexual subsystem. Johnson believed that sexual subsystem has dual function. One is for procreation, that is for reproduction, and number two is for gratification. Again, she believed that there are certain biological and social factors which affects the sexual subsystem. It is not only the sexual urge or the sexual drive. There are certain sociological factors like developing a gender role identity. Same way, learning. The people who have problem with this behavioral subsystem only end up with something called as sexual abuse, where they violate the norms of the society and they end up with something called as rape or sexual abuse, things like that. So Johnson believed that even for this subsystem, there is a proper, well-defined behavior. So that is called a sexual subsystem. The next one is aggressive subsystem. When we hear this word aggressive, we all are usually, we have that particular concept in our mind that aggression means being very rude to other people. But here Johnson has not talked about being rude. Never she has used that word. This subsystem is for protection and for preservation. It is a self-defense response, okay, taking care of oneself. We all have that behavior. When somebody is going to invade and try to abuse you, either verbally or with action, there is something we all have as in our behavior that is called as self-defense in order to protect and to preserve one's own territory. And again, Johnson believed that there are certain limits which is placed by the society on aggressive subsystem. Just because I feel that I have to protect myself, the society will not give me permission to always carry a revolver or a gun with me, because there is a limit. Though you say that I want to protect myself, I cannot see. That is what is the last point. The society says that there are certain limits which are placed for self-protection, and others' property also must be respected and protected. Others' property must also be respected. I cannot always carry a gun or a revolver with me saying that I want to protect myself. They also may become highly afraid. So we have a certain pattern of behavior for self-protection and for self-preservation, and that is what is being discussed by Johnson in aggressive subsystem. Next one is achievement subsystem. So what is an achievement subsystem? Achievement subsystem is having a mastery of an aspect of self or mastery of an environment. See, in our behavior, we have all these subsystems. Achievement is where you feel good about yourself, either because you are able to control yourself or you are able to control the environment. Say, for example, self-control, self-mastery, best example is meditation, yoga, where you try to learn to control, prayer, healing, etc. Achievement, control of the environment. Control of the environment is where maybe you are developing something, an innovative thing, and there you are gaining that achievement. Okay, so having a mastery of self or mastery of the environment. So this can be either an intellectual achievement, physical achievement, creative achievement, mechanical achievement, or social skill achievement. So these are the various areas where we can have that feeling of achievement, either intellectually, physically, mechanically, social skill, etc. So these are the 7 subsystems which was actually approved by Johnson. So Johnson believed that the 7 subsystems, number one is there should be affiliation. See, in all our behavioral things, if you're going to look into our behavior, we all have this subsystem. We all have affiliative subsystem where we have social intimacy, belongingness with each other. Number 2 is dependency, appreciating each other, waiting for approval of another person, physically helping each other. So that is all called as dependency subsystem. Then she talked about ingestive subsystem, eating food. We all have our own behavior. We know how to behave, where to eat and what to eat and how much to eat, etc. Same way eliminative subsystem. Same way sexual subsystem. Okay, sexual subsystem, gender role identity and having limits, considering the sociological factors and the biological factors. Sexual subsystem. Number 6, we discussed about aggressive subsystem. Aggressive subsystem means it's not like what the word means. Aggressive here it refers to self-protection, self-defense. But again, there is a limit. You should not harm other people. The last one, achievement subsystem. Achievement means feeling having a mastery of one's own self as well as one's own environment. That is called as achievement subsystem, intellectual, creative, mechanical, etc. The last subsystem told by Johnson is restorative subsystem. What did Johnson talk? As I already told you, Johnson did not completely allow this subsystem to be included in her theory, but still it was considered and it was kept aside. Okay, because with further research and further refinement, she believed that if needed, the subsystem can be added to her theory. So again, I have put it in the slide. It was not suggested by Johnson. It was suggested by faculty and clinicians to include behaviors like sleep, play, relaxation. So other than this achievement and aggressive and etc., in our behavior, we also have sleep, we have our own way of relaxing, play, etc. So these faculty and clinicians wanted to add these words also as restorative subsystem into Johnson's theory. But Johnson believed that sleep is a biological force and it is not a behavioral subsystem. So that is what this is always kept aside. Like 7 subsystems was told by Johnson. Restorative is being considered. It is not yet completely proved. So these are the 8 subsystems. I hope the concepts, the subconcepts and the subsystems are clear. Concept, please remember, behavior, system, behavioral system, equilibrium, stressor, tension, and instability. Number 2, subconcepts, structure, variable, boundary. Number 3, we discussed about the 8 subsystems. The 8 subsystems, affiliation, affiliation, dependency, ingestive, eliminative, sexual, aggressive, achievement, and restorative subsystem. Now coming on to what is the theory, like the whole theory, if you're going to see, each subsystem is affected by a structure and it is having a function. So this is a little bit complex, but you have to understand this. That is every subsystem, no? 8, say for example, let us talk only about the 7 subsystems. For each subsystem, there is a structure and there is a function. So let us see first what are the structural components. Johnson believed that every one of us are having a structural component called as drive, set, choice, and behavior. So let us see one by one. Though it appears abstract, it is very simple. Number 1 is drive. It is the motivation or the reason for the behavior of the subsystem. Say for example, like I feel hungry. Okay, so now the drive for the ingestive subsystem is what? The drive is I feel hungry. So there is a, in the structure I have a motivational drive. So the reason why I am behaving in a such a way, that is called as drive. Number two is set. What do you mean by set? Set is the usual or the normal behavior a patient prefers to use to meet the goal of a subsystem, which means I usually how I behave when I feel hungry. Usually how I behave. Usually how I behave, maybe I will, if it is in my home, maybe I'll tell my family member and maybe I will go and I'll have my food. Okay, so that is the usual way. Or maybe say I'm in a public place and I feel hungry. Maybe the usual things, we all have our own usual way of handling our hunger. Maybe I may look out for whether there are any shops or anything is available nearby, any good restaurants are available nearby, or maybe like any other way, is there a canteen available nearby, etc. No, so what is our usual way how we handle that? That is called as set. Number three is choice. What do you mean by choice? The various options that are available. See, usually what I do is I'll try to find out whether there is a restaurant or whether there is a canteen nearby. That is the usual way. But choice, if you're going to see, many options are there. I can call up a friend who is staying nearby to that particular place. I can say that I'm going to come to her home. I don't find any restaurants nearby. Maybe I can go for a online some like food source. Either you can call a shop and then you can tell them, you take a Google map and then you can find out where is the next restaurant. Maybe you can find whether there is any near vehicles available so that I can take a taxi or I can take a cab and I can go to that particular restaurant. Many choices are there. Or maybe I can even order food from my mobile. Okay, so many choices are there. So that is the options available. Options available to meet the goal of the subsystem. Now, these options will vary depending on the gender, age, culture, socioeconomic, and the health status. Now, a small child will not have so many options, but a grown-up person like me, we have so many options. We can think about various options. Gender-wise, it may be affected. Socioeconomic status, it may affect. Maybe if I don't have much money in my hand, I may not think about taking a cab and going to a restaurant. So, choices are affected by a lot of factors. And the last one is action or behavior. What is the consequence? Which choice did you select? Is it the usual way? How you behave, you have taken an behavior now? Or have you selected a new option? Did you order the food online and did you get it? So the new action or the behavior. So depending on the first three, the behavior is coming out. So the only thing another people can see is my behavior. They don't know what is my motive. They don't know what is the set I have. They don't know what are the choices available to me. They only see my behavior. So Johnson believed that for all the subsystems, these four structural components will come. What are they? Number one is there is a motive behind our behavior. Number two, there is a usual way how we do this behavior. That is called a set. Number three, there are so many options available. If you are a very adaptable person, you will pick up many options. That is called as choice. What is the last one? The behavior. What comes out because of the previous three is called as the action or the behavior. Now we are coming on to the end of the video. Only a little few more slides are there. So structural component is over. Now Johnson also believed that for each subsystem there is a functional requirement. Okay, functional requirement is very easy to remember. She believed that each of the subsystem has three functions. Number one, we want to be protected from noxious influences with which a person cannot cope. If you're going to take affiliative subsystem, I want to be protected from people who are very toxic and from whose web I may not be able to escape. So we have to be protected. Number two, to be nurtured. When I have a very good affiliative subsystem, I'll have that love, affection and belongingness. Every one of us will be nurtured through the input of supplies from the environment. Number three, to be stimulated to growth and prevent stagnation. It is not enough only to be nurtured. We should learn how to grow. We should learn how to control our desire for food. We should learn how to control our desire of aggressive subsystem. Okay, learning to grow. So these are the three functions which she believed is common for all the subsystems. What are they? One is to be protected from harmful stimuli. Number two is to nurture and to grow. Number three is to be stimulated so that we will have a chance to grow, and that will prevent our stagnation. So that's it. So the representation of Johnson's model is something like this. Please write all the subsystems. Then you have that four structural components. That is the goal, the set, the choice, and the behavior. So this is a model of Johnson's behavioral system theory, which is given in the textbook. But you find that this model was not developed by Johnson. This model was actually developed by Torres in the year 1986 for Johnson's theory. So what is that? You find that 7 subsystems are there. So this whole box, no, this will be the man. This is a behavioral system. Within this behavioral system, you have 7 subsystems. And from outside, there is a stressful stimuli which is coming, and this stressful stimuli can affect this subsystem. And if the person is able to adapt well, okay, there will be adaptation. But if the function is going to be ineffective, there will be tension, stressor, and disequilibrium. Again, there is a feedback and it continues. So it's a very simple thing. Stressor is there, okay, the systems are there in effective coping or ineffective coping. So this is actually a summary of Johnson's theory. So patient is a behavioral system. This behavioral system is having 7 subsystems. Each subsystem is having a structure. Each subsystem is having a function. Totally, there are 4 elements of structure: motive or drive, the set, the usual way of doing things, choice, options available, and the behavior. 3 functional requirements: protection, nurturing, enhancing growth. Then she believed that as long as the internal and the external conditions are going to be orderly and predictable, everything, the system will be stable, the system will maintain oneself. As long as we get food at the right time, as long as we are having very good friends, as long as we have people where you can depend, as long as you keep achieving in life, as long as you can protect yourself, the system will be stable. But if any functional requirement is not met, then dysfunctional behavior will result. If you're not going to get food, if you're not having people who can take care of you, or where you can nurture another people, what can happen is dysfunctional behavior will result. This is what is said by Johnson. So behavioral subsystem maintains its relationship with the environment. Very important point. Johnson believed that behavioral subsystem is an active one. It is not a passive. What do you mean by active one? We take conscious efforts to grow. We take conscious efforts from the environment. We learn how to behave. From our family, we learn. From our friends, from learned people, we learn how to behave. So it is an active process and it is not a passive one. So this is, I know that Johnson's theory is not very too simple to study, but at the same time, we should really be proud of Dorothy Johnson, because she was the person who gave so much of importance to one phenomena called as behavioral system. See how much she has done that in-depth work to discuss about the behavioral system. So you find that she has discussed about the various concepts, the sub-concepts, the 7+1, 8 subsystems, the structure and the function. Shall we just summarize it for the last time? What is Johnson's behavioral system theory talking about? The concepts: behavior, system, behavioral system, then subsystem. What is a subsystem? Mini system is called as a subsystem. Then she talked about equilibrium, the stressor which is coming from outside, the tension which is created, and the system goes into instability if the tension is not handled properly. Then she discussed about the sub-concepts, the structure, the variables, the boundary. Then about the 8 subsystems. Number 1, affiliative. Number 2, dependency. Number 3, ingestive. Number 4, eliminative. Number 5, reproductive. Number 6, aggressive. Aggressive means self-protection. Number 7, achievement subsystem. Mastery of self, mastery of the environment. Last one, restorative subsystem. She has not completely given approval for restorative subsystem. Sleep, play, relaxation. All those things comes under restorative subsystem. Each subsystem has a structure. Each subsystem has a function. What is the main common structural elements? Every subsystem has a drive. We have our own way of behaving, which is called a set. We have the choices, multiple choices available. From that, we select and we try to behave outside, which is the only thing which is seen by others. Functional requirements, 3. What are they? Nurturing, protecting, and then enhancing the growth. So if you can remember this much, and if you can also remember that behavioral system is an active one and it is not a passive one, you have studied the major components of Johnson's behavioral system theory. Okay, so if you get for your exam, if you're going to get in your exam a question on explain or discuss in detail about the various concepts and the phenomena according to Johnson's behavioral system theory, if you can write at least this much, the concept, the sub-concepts, the structure, the function and the subsystems, you have covered that portion. So in my next video, I will be explaining about the assumptions, the propositions, the meta paradigm and the nursing process application according to Johnson's behavioral system theory. Okay, so I hope this video is going to be helpful, especially for the students. Please remember, take it very simple. Don't make it very complex. At least remember the name of the theory and you will be able to write a lot of concepts. And please remember the main component of the theory is covered by the 7 plus 1, 8 subsystems. If this much, if you can remember, I am sure that you will be able to write your paper very well if this question is going to be asked. So thank you very much for all your great support, and I sincerely pray and wish that this video is going to be useful to all those who are going to listen to